"We're not serving your kind here. You need to find somewhere else to be." The dismissive words came from Derek Torres, floor manager of the Harborside, a high-end establishment in Boston's financial district, as he eyed a customer in a frayed jacket and scuffed work boots. The man was a ghost from another world, completely out of place among the suited lawyers and bankers who bled money on expensive cocktails. Unfazed, the man simply remained seated and quietly requested water and fries, the cheapest items on the entire menu. From her position across the bar, Sarah Mitchell, a black waitress pushing through her 5th consecutive double shift, took in the whole scene. She knew Derek's playbook by heart: humiliate anyone who didn't fit the upscale brand. Yet something in the stranger's weary eyes resonated with her own exhaustion. She started toward his table to take the order, but her response to his simple request would leave the man utterly stunned and struggling to find words. Neither of them could have known that this one single encounter was about to expose a deep-seated secret that was draining the life from them all. Alone in his corner office on the 14th floor, Alexander Brooks watched the lights of Boston twinkle in the dark glass behind him. It was well after 9 on a Tuesday night. The financial district below had gone quiet hours before. On any other night, he would have been long gone, but a single email that had arrived earlier held him captive. The sender was anonymous, and the subject line was cryptic: "Check the tip pool." Alex found himself clicking it open again, having already read it 3 times. The message itself was painfully brief, just one sentence accompanied by 3 attachments. "They're stealing from us." The first image was a photo of the staff schedule board, marred with handwritten edits. Sarah Mitchell's name was crossed out for a Friday night and reassigned to a Monday lunch. Another server, Emma Williams, was bumped from a prime Saturday dinner to a dead Tuesday breakfast. Someone with manager access had clearly sabotaged both of their shifts. The second photo revealed a screenshot of bank deposits, all of them small amounts that were consistently under $1,000. $835 on October 31st, $890 on November 3rd, $1,235 on November 7th. The numbers were erratic, with no discernible pattern. When he saw the third photograph, his jaw tightened. It was a receipt from the Harborside Tavern, his flagship restaurant. The line for the credit card tip clearly read $45, but beneath it, scrawled in different ink, was a note: "Pool total, $12. Alex immediately pulled his own revenue reports, cross-referencing the dates from the email. By all accounts, the Harborside was doing exceptionally well. Its revenue had climbed 12% in the last quarter, and customer reviews were holding steady at an average of 4.7 stars. On paper, the business was rock solid, but something else buried in the data caught his eye. He navigated to the HR folder and began examining the termination records. In the last 6 months, a staggering 15 employees had quit from that single location. 15. The turnover rate had exploded by 280%. He sifted through the notes from their exit interviews. While most of them gave vague excuses like scheduling issues or personal reasons, 3 had mentioned problems with management before the interviewer noted they chose not to provide more detail. Alex sank back into his leather chair. His own father had launched the original Harborside 30 years earlier as a neighborhood tavern where everybody felt like family. Since his father's death 2 years ago, Alex had plunged himself into expansion, adding 4 more locations to create a network of 5 restaurants and a staff of 80 people. He'd handed off the daily grind to managers he believed were reliable, so he could focus on growth and investor relations. Had he become too removed from it all? His phone buzzed on the desk, a text from his business partner. "Quarterly board meeting moved to Friday. Need your projections." Alex put the phone down, ignoring the message completely. The projections could be put on hold. He pulled up the personnel files for the Harborside and located the current floor manager, Derek Torres. He'd been with the company for 2.5 years, held an MBA from a good school, and came across as a confident leader in his interview. Alex had personally signed off on hiring him and later approved his promotion to floor manager just 18 months ago. Derek's performance reviews had been nothing short of perfect. Revenue climbed under his supervision, labor costs were down, and there had even been a decrease in customer complaints. But his employees were fleeing, and one of them, or someone close, had just delivered proof that something was fundamentally broken. He opened a fresh browser window, logged into their point-of-sale system, and began pulling all the tip data for the last 8 weeks. Credit card tips were automatically tracked and distributed to servers in their paychecks. Cash tips, however, were supposed to be given directly to the staff after their shift. The system had no way to monitor that cash, not unless someone was intercepting it before it ever reached the servers. Alex's mind flashed to the framed quote that still hung in his father's old office. "Your people are your business. Protect them like it." He had failed that simple principle. He had let the company grow while completely losing sight of the people who kept it running. His father would be ashamed. Alex shut his laptop and fixed his eyes on a photo on his desk from 1995. The original Harborside on its opening day. It showed his father in a worn work jacket, standing proudly in front of the bar. That very jacket was still hanging in Alex's closet at home. His father had worn it for 20 years while building the business from scratch. Alex grabbed his phone, opened a new note, and typed just 3 words. "Go undercover Thursday." He needed to find the truth for himself, not from some spreadsheet or a carefully worded HR report. His objective was to post up at the bar, watch the crew in action, and see exactly how his manager handled people when the owner wasn't around. And if he discovered someone was pocketing cash from his employees, from the legacy his father built, he would set things straight. Thursday evening at the Harborside unfolded just like any other. The after-work regulars began to trickle in around 6. There were bankers in their Brooks Brothers suits and lawyers with their leather briefcases, mixed in with young professionals on the hunt for happy hour discounts. By 7, not a single table was empty, and a queue had formed for seats at the bar. Sarah Mitchell wove through the organized chaos with a finely tuned grace. Table 8 was ready for another round of drinks. The party at table 12 was eager to order some starters. The foretop over by the window was looking at entrees. She managed it all seamlessly. 6 tables, 12 diners. Orders fired off to the kitchen in a perfect rhythm. Sarah, Derek Torres's voice cut through the din from his post behind the bar. "The folks at table 9 are asking for you, specifically. They're regulars. On it." Sarah grabbed a pair of menus and walked over to table 9, where the Thompson couple was seated. They showed up every Thursday without fail. They consistently ordered the salmon special, and they always tipped 20%. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, how wonderful to see you again. We wouldn't miss our Thursday with the best server in town," Mrs. Thompson said with a warm smile. Sarah took their order, salmon for both of them, just as she'd expected, and went back to the POS terminal to put it through. Derek was standing next to the computer with his arms crossed, surveying the floor. "Busy night," Sarah commented while entering the order. "It could be busier." Table 6 is camping out. They finished their meal 30 minutes ago. Sarah glanced toward table 6, where an elderly couple was quietly chatting over a shared dessert. "They're just enjoying themselves. They're tying up prime real estate. I need that table turned over for the next seating. I'll go check on them in just a few minutes." Derek's jaw clenched. "Go check on them now. We are not running a community center." Sarah kept her expression perfectly neutral. Of course. She walked toward table 6 holding the check, a professional smile fixed on her face. "Please, take your time, but here is this for whenever you are ready." The elderly gentleman looked up surprised. "Oh goodness, we're holding you up, aren't we? I am so sorry." "Not at all," Sarah insisted gently. "Please, enjoy yourselves. I only wanted you to have this for when you needed it." "We should get out of your hair," the woman said, already reaching for her purse. Truly, there is no rush. But they were already pushing back their chairs, leaving cash on the table as they hurried out without taking another bite of their dessert. Sarah went back to the POS station to close them out. The tip was exactly 10%, much less than they typically left. She slipped the money into her apron, adding it to the substantial wad she'd collected. By 11, the main rush was over. Only a handful of patrons lingered over their last drinks. Derek rounded up the floor staff and brought them to the back office. It was Sarah, Emma Williams, Jason Davis, and Rebecca Moore, the bartender. "Good haul tonight, team," Derek said, retrieving the large tip jar from beneath the bar. "Let's do the breakdown." This was the nightly ceremony. Everyone emptied their cash tips from their aprons into the jar. Derek would count the total, divide it using some obscure formula he never explained, and then pass out envelopes with each person's take. Sarah contributed $280 from her apron. That was from the Thompsons, table 8, table 12, the foretop, and 3 other smaller tables. She had been keeping a rough estimate in her head all night. It had been a great shift. Emma put in $195. Jason added $240. Rebecca tossed in $120 from the bar. Derek counted it all with his back to everyone, so no one could watch his hands. "Kind of a slow one," he announced. "Only $835 total." Sarah's internal arithmetic didn't match his. She had seen that room packed solid for 4 hours straight, but she didn't say a word. Derek handed out the envelopes. Sarah opened hers. $63. Her expression didn't flicker. There was no surprise on her face, only a tired sense of familiarity. Emma opened hers and frowned. "This seems a little low for how slammed we were." "Busy doesn't guarantee tips," Derek replied smoothly. "We had a lot of cheap tippers tonight. You all worked hard, but that's just what came in." Jason simply shrugged and put the envelope in his pocket. Rebecca didn't even bother to open hers. But Sarah watched Emma's expression shift from confusion to doubt, and finally to reluctant acceptance. The new server was figuring it out. You don't argue with Derek. You just take what you're given. After everyone else was gone, Sarah stood by herself at her locker. She opened the flimsy envelope one last time. $63. She had put in a 6-hour shift, served 12 tables, and provided flawless service, all to walk out with $63. She reached behind her spare uniform and slid out a tattered manila envelope. Written on the front, in her neat handwriting, was Liam's college fund. She opened the flap. Stuffed inside were 47 pieces of paper, a collection of napkins, receipts, and ripped-off order tickets. Every single one documented a night just like this. Sarah found a blank receipt and started writing. Thursday, November 7th. My table's estimated $280. Derek gave me $63. She folded the slip of paper and pushed it into the stack. 48 nights now, 48 lies. She slid the envelope back into its hiding place, put on her coat, and walked out the back door. Her car was old. The heater was shot, but it roared to life on the third attempt. She sat in the cold for a minute, just staring at the back door of the restaurant. Then she drove home to her son. The following morning, Alex stood inside his bedroom closet, gazing at a jacket he hadn't put on in years. Tucked away in the far corner of the closet, behind a wall of suits and dress shirts, hung the old Carhartt work coat. It was a 20-year-old relic, its brown canvas faded and sleeves flecked with old paint. It had been his father's jacket, the same one he'd worn while raising the original Harborside from the ground up. Alex had held on to it after his father's death, finding it impossible to part with. Now he slid it off the hanger and shrugged it on. The fit was tight across his shoulders, and the zipper snagged halfway to his chest. He faced his reflection in the mirror and saw how the jacket made him a stranger. The tech mogul with the corner office was gone, as was the successful restaurant owner. Dressed in this coat, along with worn jeans and scuffed boots, he looked like a man who had just put in a hard day on a job site. It was perfect. Sometime in the sleepless hours of the night, a plan had taken shape. A formal audit of Derek was out of the question. A public investigation would give him more than enough time to bury any evidence of wrongdoing. Sending in human resources would be just as useless. Derek would simply turn on the charm, burying any real issues beneath a layer of smooth explanations. He had to witness it for himself, to see the unvarnished truth. His phone buzzed. It was his business partner again. "Alex, where are those projections? The board is meeting in 6 hours. Send them my apologies. Something's come up. What could possibly? Tell them I will join the Monday call remotely. I have a personal matter to handle this weekend. He ended the call before the argument could gain any traction. Alex used the remainder of his Friday for logistics. According to the schedule, the harbor side ran from Tuesday through Sunday, closing on Mondays. Derek managed the floor from Thursday to Sunday, covering all the peak hours. Tonight was the ideal opportunity. A Friday night rush meant maximum staff and a full house of customers. He drove to an unfamiliar bank across town and took out $15 in cash. He left his credit cards in a drawer at home, took off his watch. The Rolex would be an immediate tell, and even removed his wedding ring. He had to become a ghost. At 6 o'clock, Alex pulled on the work coat, a pair of faded jeans, and his most beat-up boots. They were the Timberlands he kept for yard work, the soles beginning to separate from the toes. A final look in the mirror confirmed it. The metamorphosis was complete. He could almost hear his father's voice in his head. You find out what people are really made of when they think you don't matter. Alex grabbed his keys and walked out, parking his car 2 blocks from the harbor side, deliberately avoiding the owner's reserved space. He walked the rest of the way, the sharp November air cutting right through the thin jacket, and hesitated at the restaurant's entrance. Through the large glass window, he could see the familiar, controlled chaos of a Friday service in full swing. The tables were packed, servers weaved through the tight spaces, and the bar was swarmed. This was his restaurant, his team, his father's entire legacy, and somewhere in the middle of it all, someone might be stealing from the very people who made it thrive. Alex took a steadying breath and pushed his way through the door. The hostess, Maria Gonzalez, a name he recognized from the company's org chart, gave him a professional smile that faltered for a fraction of a second as her eyes took in his ragged appearance. Good evening. Just one tonight? Yeah, just myself. Great. Let me see where I can put you. She glanced across the dining room, and Alex watched her gaze slide right past the desirable tables by the window, finally landing on a single open seat at the bar. We have an opening at the bar if that works for you. Perfect. She led him through the bustling restaurant as Alex kept his head down, carefully avoiding any eye contact. He walked right by Derek Torres, who was standing with a clipboard near the kitchen entrance. Derek's eyes scanned right over him without a flicker of recognition. He was just another customer. Alex took his seat at the bar, and Rebecca Moore, the bartender, walked over. What can I get started for you? I'll wait for the server, thanks. Rebecca nodded once and moved away as Alex surveyed the room. There she was, Sarah Mitchell, carrying a tray of drinks to a nearby table. She moved with a quiet self-assurance, offering customers a warm, efficient smile. She would be the test, both for herself and for Derek. It was time to see what they were both truly made of. Sarah dropped off the drinks at table 14 and glanced over at the bar. A new customer had taken a seat, worn jacket, work boots, and eyes heavy with exhaustion. He had the look of a man who'd just come off a long, hard shift. She grabbed her notepad and went to him. Hi there, Sarah said with a genuine smile. What can I get for you? The man met her eyes for a brief moment before looking down at the menu, appearing deeply self-conscious. Hey, he cleared his throat. What's the most affordable thing you've got? Sarah's pen paused over her notepad, but her voice carried no hint of judgment. Our appetizers start at $7. The fries are really popular, or we have mozzarella sticks. Just a water is fine. He looked at his phone as if he were checking a dismal bank balance, clearly embarrassed. And the fries, a small order, that's it. An awkward silence settled between them. Sarah hadn't written anything down. She was just looking at him. Really looking. It wasn't pity in her eyes, it was recognition. She knew that expression well. She'd seen it on her own face in the mirror during the tough years after leaving her ex-husband. Long day? She asked gently. The question seemed to take him by surprise. An unguarded, honest answer slipped out. Yeah, a long week, actually. Sarah nodded slowly, knowingly. She set her pen down and leaned against the counter. Her posture clearly said, I'm in no rush. Can I be honest with you? She asked. Okay. The kitchen made a few extra burgers tonight. We have a new line cook. He's a great guy, but he's still figuring out the portions. He ended up making 4 burgers too many. She offered a small, sincere smile. My manager despises food waste. It's one of the few things he's actually right about. The man's posture immediately became guarded. Listen, one of those burgers is hitting the garbage in about 10 minutes if it doesn't find a home. Any chance you could help us out with that? Her voice was gentle, but there was a firmness beneath it. I can't, he murmured. I don't have any money on me. It's already been made and paid for. So right now its destination is either you or the trash. She paused. In between us, you look like you've had a long day. A guy who's been working that hard deserves more than just a plate of fries. Alex opened his mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't form. He just stared at her, trying to assemble a coherent thought as a knot formed in his throat. He was completely unable to speak. The moment hung there for 5 full seconds, his mouth slightly agape, his mind blank. His eyes began to water, and he blinked furiously to fight it back. The muscles in his throat strained, trying to force out words that were trapped inside. Sarah just waited, her expression patient and kind, with no hint of pressure. Finally, he managed a choked whisper. Why? His voice cracked. Why would you do this for me? Because every single person who walks through that door deserves to be treated like they matter. She casually picked up her pen. It really is that simple. So, can I get you that burger? I promise it's amazing. It's got our house-made sauce, bacon, aged cheddar, and comes with sweet potato fries. Still unable to find his voice, he gave a small, shaky nod. Sarah's smile became even warmer. Perfect. I'll get that right out to you. And look, if my manager gives you any grief over it, you tell him something for me. Tell him Sarah said it was kitchen waste, and he can take it up with me. She jotted on her pad, tore the slip off, and headed towards the kitchen. Wait, he called out, his voice hoarse. She turned. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. Thank you, Sarah. His words were heavy with an emotion he was barely keeping in check. Seriously, thank you, she replied. You are very welcome. With one last smile, she said, be right back, then disappeared into the organized chaos of the kitchen, leaving Alex frozen at the bar. He couldn't move, couldn't even begin to process what had just happened. As he reached for his water, he saw his own hand trembling. He set the glass back down without taking a sip. This woman had shown him more genuine kindness in 60 seconds than most people manage in an entire lifetime. And she had done it while being robbed blind by his own manager. Derek Torres had observed the entire interaction from his post near the kitchen pass. He had marked the man in the worn-out jacket the second he came in. He was precisely the sort of customer Derek liked to get seated and out the door as fast as possible. A low-value table, likely a terrible tipper, and Sarah was wasting far too much of her time on him. Derek stalked over to the POS station just as Sarah was putting the order through. He leaned in close, his voice a low, biting hiss. What do you think you're doing? Sarah didn't look up from the screen. Kitchen waste. It was an extra burger from the prep line. I know exactly what you did. That's a $24 burger. It was going to be thrown away. We are not a charity for every stray who wanders in. A menacing edge sharpened Derek's tone. This is not a soup kitchen. At that, Sarah finally looked up at him. Her voice was eerily calm and steady. It is food waste. Company policy states we can comp reasonable amounts to avoid it. I don't care what the policy says. You know my rules about unauthorized comps. He crossed his arms, defiant. That's coming out of your tips tonight, $24. A flicker of something, maybe pain, maybe just resignation, crossed Sarah's features before she immediately composed herself. Fine, she said. Is that all? Yes, that's it. She submitted the order on the terminal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have tables waiting. He cut her off. And you're cut at 9 instead of 11. I can't afford servers who waste time on customers who don't pay. Sarah's jaw tightened visibly, but she gave one sharp nod and turned toward the kitchen. As she walked away, Derek called after her. just loud enough for her to hear. That bleeding heart is going to bleed you dry, Mitchell. She never broke her stride or gave any sign she'd heard him. Sitting at the bar, Alex had caught every single word. His vantage point gave him a direct line to the POS station, and Derek's harsh whisper had carried just far enough. The stunned emotion that had left him speechless moments before began to curdle and harden into something else entirely. She wasn't just being kind, she was paying for his meal with tip money that she clearly couldn't afford to lose. And she was being punished for it, losing $24 plus 2 hours of work. And she had just said fine without a moment's hesitation. The hand Alex had resting on the bar slowly tightened into a fist. He forced himself to take a breath and relax his fingers, keeping his face a mask of neutrality. But deep inside, a fundamental shift had occurred. This was no longer just an investigation into tip theft. This was about a woman who had chosen compassion over her own job security, who had looked at a stranger and decided he deserved dignity, even if it cost her. And the man who was supposed to be managing his business, the man meant to be protecting his team, was the one bringing the hammer down on her for it. Alex had come into his restaurant searching for evidence. He was leaving with something far more important. He had discovered exactly who Sarah Mitchell was, and he knew precisely what kind of man Derek Torres was. About 8 minutes later, Sarah returned with a tray. She set it down before Alex, whose eyes widened as he took in what she had brought him. The Harborside Burger Deluxe was plated to perfection, with crisp bacon and aged cheddar melting over the side, all on a brioche bun. The sweet potato fries were arranged with care, not just dumped on the plate. There was a side house salad with vinaigrette served separately, and nestled right next to the plate was a small ramekin of chocolate mousse. The dessert. That wasn't, Alex started to say. I figured. Sarah's smile was knowing. But you mentioned it's been a tough week, and believe me, chocolate is the answer. She topped off his water before he could ask, this time with a fresh wedge of lemon. Enjoy, she said. Just give a shout if you need anything else. He spoke her name, Sarah, which made her pause. I overheard that guy about your tips and cutting your shift. You didn't have to do this for me. Her gaze met his, and the hard edge in her expression seemed to dissolve. Yes, I did. A quiet moment hung between them. My father taught me that your true character is defined by how you behave when you think no one is looking. Her eyes drifted toward Derek across the restaurant, and even if someone is watching, it doesn't alter what the right thing to do is. But you matter. She stated it with simple, undeniable force. Every single person who sits at this bar matters. Don't you ever let anyone convince you otherwise, okay? And before he could find a response, she had turned to help another customer. Alex just sat there, looking down at the plate of food. A knot had formed in his throat, making it feel impossible to swallow. With a hand that wasn't entirely steady, he lifted his fork and took a bite. The burger was phenomenal, but that wasn't what was causing the wave of emotion to build inside him. For the following 2 hours, Alex nursed his meal, stretching it out as long as he could, and he watched Sarah work without interruption. At 7:30, an elderly couple walked in. The hostess began leading them to a less than desirable table near the restrooms. Sarah intercepted them seamlessly. Hey Maria, table 8 just opened. I bet they'd much prefer the view from the window. Just like that, the couple was settled into the best seat in the entire restaurant. At 8:15, a man in a very expensive suit snapped his fingers at Sarah to get more water. She didn't so much as flinch, refilling his glass with that same warm smile she had given Alex. Can I get you anything else at all, sir? At 8:50, just as he'd threatened, Derek cut her loose. Sarah clocked out, but didn't make a move for the exit. She made a point to visit each of her tables, passing them off to Emma with specific instructions. The folks at table 6 have a dairy allergy. Table 12 is here for an anniversary, so they might be interested in dessert. And table 8 really likes extra lemon with their water. At 9:15, the shift was officially over. Derek called the servers into the back office to handle the tip pool. Alex slid off the bar stool, leaving a $10 bill, which was 2/3 of the cash he had on him, and ambled toward the exit. He lingered, though, positioning himself in the hallway where he had a partial line of sight into the back office through the door's small window. The nightly ritual began. Each server added their cash earnings to a jar. With his back to them all, Derek started counting. He passed out the envelopes. Sarah opened hers to reveal $63. Her face betrayed no shock, only a look of tired resignation. As she moved to her locker, Alex watched through the slightly ajar door. He saw her reach in and retrieve something. It was a worn-out manila envelope. She scribbled a note on a small piece of paper, then tucked the envelope out of sight behind her uniform. Alex slipped out the front door, walked the 2 blocks to his vehicle, and sat in the cold silence. He had seen everything he had come to see. Alex was at his desk at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning. He had hardly slept, Sarah's words replaying endlessly in his mind. Every single person who sits at this bar matters. He dialed his IT director's personal number. I need all security footage from the Harborside's back office camera for the last 8 weeks. There was a beat of silence. That's a whole lot of footage of Derek. Is everything all right? Just pull it. And don't breathe a word of this to anyone. I need it before noon. Yes, sir. At noon sharp, Alex was behind his locked office door, his laptop displaying a split screen of the surveillance feed. He had the specific dates pulled from the bank deposit screenshot in the email. October 31st, November 3rd, and November 7th. He queued up October 31st. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. Long after closing, Derek walked into the empty back office. He glanced around nervously, ensuring the door was fully closed. Then he fished the tip jar out from under the main counter. His back was to the camera as he counted, but his hands were clearly visible, moving piles of cash from the jar to the desktop. His fingers were a blur, separating, counting, and stacking the bills. He then separated a thick portion and stuffed it into his jacket pocket. He did a quick recount of what remained, split it into 4 smaller stacks, and slid those into individual envelopes. The entire operation took less than 3 minutes. Derek checked the door one final time, and then he was gone. Alex felt a pit in his stomach. He skipped ahead to November 3rd. It was the exact same routine. Derek, all alone, counting cash and skimming off the top. This time, the camera angle was even more revealing. He took roughly 1/3 of the total cash before splitting up the rest. He then jumped to November 7th, the Thursday night Alex himself had been there. It was the same procedure, with Derek's hand sliding bills into his jacket with the casual, rehearsed motion of someone who had done this countless times. Alex started compiling the clips. He identified 43 distinct incidents over the 8-week period. Every single shift Derek was in charge followed the identical pattern. Count, pocket, distribute. He began making a rough tally based on the denominations he could make out. Over 8 weeks, Derek had probably pocketed $12,800 from the tip pool, if not significantly more. Alex phoned his lawyer that Saturday afternoon. They arranged to meet at a quiet coffee shop across town, a place where neither of them would be recognized. After watching the footage, his lawyer's face was grim. This is felony wage theft, plain and simple. The Department of Labor will prosecute if you decide to file a formal complaint, but my recommendation is to try handling this internally at first. Fire him, recover whatever funds you can, and then you can make a decision about pressing charges. I want him prosecuted. In that case, we need to begin documenting absolutely everything. The video evidence was damning, but it wasn't the whole story. I needed a paper trail, financial statements, personal accounts from the staff he'd wronged, and hard proof of every dollar he took. That Sunday morning, Alex began his deep dive into the restaurant's finances. He extracted point-of-sale data for every single shift Derek had supervised over the past 18 months and started meticulously cross-checking it with the payroll system. The point-of-sale software automatically logged all tips made by credit card. While those tips were paid directly to servers through the payroll system, cash gratuities were meant to be divided up at the end of the night. The system had no digital footprint of those cash amounts, but Alex had a way to approximate them. He analyzed the credit card tip figures and applied the standard industry average to them. For instance, if a night brought in $400 in credit card tips, the cash tips would typically be around $250. He methodically built a spreadsheet tracking dates, estimated cash, and what the true payout should have been. Next, he examined the bank deposits Derek had personally made, using the screenshots provided in the anonymous email. On November 7th, the sales system showed $835 in credit card tips. With an estimated $400 in cash, the total came to $1,235. Derek, however, had told the staff the total was only $835. He outright lied about the credit card tips and had pocketed every cent of the cash. Then, on November 8th, Derek had deposited precisely $1,235 into his own personal bank account. Alex moved on to other dates. October 31st showed a discrepancy of $1,235, followed by a personal deposit of that exact amount. November 3rd revealed a shortfall of $890 and a matching deposit of $890. The figures were identical. It was the proof he needed. Alex dedicated his Sunday evening to calling former employees he found in the HR files. 3 of them were willing to speak. Emma Martinez, who had resigned 3 months ago, said Derek took a 40% cut of all tips, claiming it was a management fee. She told him, "The minute I questioned if that was even legal, my shifts were cut down to almost nothing. I had to leave. I couldn't make rent." The other 2 former employees described the very same scheme. By the time Sunday night ended, Alex had constructed a case that was impossible to refute. He had 43 documented instances of theft from the security cameras, totaling $31,200 stolen from 4 current employees in just 18 months. He also had the bank deposits that corresponded exactly to the stolen funds, not to mention the damning testimony from 3 ex-employees. Finally, he had the point-of-sale data that proved every lie. Alex compiled all of it into a directory he labeled the Harborside Internal Investigation before sending out a calendar invitation on Monday morning. It was a mandatory staff meeting scheduled for that morning at 10 a.m. All front-of-house staff were ordered to be there. The description read, "Owner will address concerns." Derek saw the invite appear and smirked, thinking the owner was finally swinging by. He assumed the visit was to praise everyone for the recent spike in revenue. At 10 o'clock on Monday morning, 8 employees filed into the Harbor's small conference room. There was Sarah Mitchell, Emma Williams, Jason Davis, Rebecca Moore, Maria Gonzalez, Tommy Anderson from the kitchen staff, and of course, Derek Torres. A nervous hum filled the air, but Derek, seated confidently at the head of the table, assumed the owner's visit must mean good news. Sarah chose a seat near the back, feeling uneasy. She'd been called in on her day off and had no idea what was going on. Her stomach was in knots when the door opened and Alexander Brooks strode in, looking the part of the owner in a tailored suit and a perfect haircut. He shut the door firmly behind him and took his place at the front of the room. A hush fell over the staff. Sarah's face drained of all color. She stared, the shock of recognition hitting her like a physical blow. "Oh my God," she thought. Derek frowned in confusion and demanded, "Who are you?" Alex met his gaze. "My name is Alexander Brooks," he said calmly, "and I own this restaurant." The atmosphere in the room crackled with tension. Sarah felt like she couldn't get any air. The guy from Friday night, the one with the worn-out jacket who ordered cheap, was the owner. "Thursday night," Alex continued, his voice perfectly level, "I sat right at that bar wearing an $8 jacket, and I ordered a water and fries." Sarah's hand shot up to cover her mouth. "Sarah," Alex said, his tone softening as he turned to her, "you came over and asked if I'd had a long day. I told you I had. You mentioned the kitchen had made a couple of extra burgers and asked if I could help you out by eating one so it wouldn't go to waste." "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "I had no idea. I didn't mean to." "Don't you apologize," Alex cut in, his voice firm yet gentle. "Let me finish." He took a step closer to her. You brought me a $24 burger with upgraded sides and a chocolate mousse. You didn't charge me a cent. You said to me that everyone deserves more than just fries. The only sound in the room was Sarah's quiet, shaky breaths. Alex then turned his attention to Derek, his voice turning to ice. Your manager overheard this and informed you that the $24 for that meal was coming out of your tips. You just said, fine. He then cut your hours from 11 down to 9 as a punishment. You said, fine, again. And then you served that meal to me anyway, and you told me that I mattered. By now, Sarah was crying, with silent tears streaming down her cheeks. Derek! Alex's focus was now entirely on the floor manager. You informed me that Thursday was a quiet night. You said the total tips came to $835. Is that what you recall? Derek fidgeted in his seat as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Yes, it was slow. That's odd because my point-of-sale system shows $835 in credit card tips, along with an estimated $400 in cash based on standard ratios. That's more than $1,235 in total. Could you please explain that discrepancy to me? The room was dead silent. Alex then opened his laptop and swiveled the screen for everyone to see. Model. On the screen, the security footage rolled, showing Derek all by himself in the back office after hours, his hands deep in the tip jar, stuffing bills into his pocket. A wave of sharp breaths filled the room. 43 times, Alex stated, his voice low. I had my IT guy pull every single clip from the last 8 weeks. The video played on, showing Derek glancing at the door before smoothly sliding a wad of cash into his jacket, and then counting out the leftovers. By our estimates, you've pocketed $12,800 in just the last 8 weeks, Alex announced, his eyes fixed on Derek. And when I ran a full audit of the past 18 months, that total balloons to $31,200, taken from 4 of your employees. Tears streamed down Emma Williams' face, while Jason Davis practically vibrated with fury. Rebecca Moore was frozen in her chair, and then there was Sarah Mitchell. Alex switched the screen to a spreadsheet. $11,200 stolen directly from you over 18 months. A tiny, choked sound escaped Sarah's lips. Jason Davis, $8,100. Emma Williams, $6,800. Rebecca Moore, $5,100. Those are just estimates, Derek began to protest. No, Alex shot back. They're hard calculations based on point-of-sale data that we cross-reference with your personal bank deposits. He slid another document across the table. On November 7th, you deposited $1,235 into your checking account, which happens to be the exact amount the tips were short that day. October 31st, you deposited another $1,235, a perfect match. On November 3rd, it was $890, also a direct hit. All the cockiness drained from Derek's posture as his shoulders slumped. Sarah, Alex said, his voice softening, is there anything you want to add to this? Every head in the room swiveled toward her. She seemed stuck to her chair for a long moment before shakily getting to her feet. On unsteady legs, she made her way to her locker out in the hall, her every move visible through the glass wall of the conference room. The room was silent as they watched her reach behind her folded uniform, retrieving a battered manila envelope. She returned and placed the envelope on the table with the label facing them, Liam's College Fund. Then she opened the flap. A cascade of paper scraps tumbled out, 48 of them, a mix of napkins, receipts, and old order tickets. I've been writing it all down, she said. Though her voice trembled, it held firm. Every single shift for the last 9 weeks. I wrote down what my tables actually tipped me versus what Derek handed me at the end of the night. She lifted a stained piece of paper. Thursday, November 7th, my tables brought in about $280. Derek gave me $63. She grabbed another slip. October 30th, I made around $245. He paid me out $71. She held up another. October 23rd, my tips were $310. I went home with $89. She locked eyes with Derek And for the first time, the fear that always clouded her gaze was replaced by something hard and unyielding. I had no idea if anyone would ever believe me, but I hoped that someday, someone would care enough. So I kept track of everything. Alex picked up a few of the scraps, his eyes scanning them. The total discrepancy she's documented here is $8,400 over 9 weeks. This is, Derek started, getting to his feet. You can't prove. I have security footage, POS data, bank records, testimony from 3 former employees who quit because of you, and now Sarah's documentation, which lines up with our data perfectly. Alex's voice was cold as steel. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security is already waiting outside to escort you from the premises. The color drained from Derek's face, then flooded back as pure rage. You can't do this. If you so much as think about contesting this termination, set foot on this property again, or attempt to contact any of our staff, past or present, I will personally see to it that you are charged with felony wage theft. For the record, the Department of Labor is already reviewing your case. On cue, 2 security guards stepped into the room. Get him out of my restaurant, Alex commanded without looking away from Derek. Derek's eyes darted around the room, to Sarah, to Emma, to Jason, to Rebecca, pleading. Not a single person would meet his gaze. The guards took him by the arms and led him away, the door clicking shut behind them. An absolute heavy silence fell over the room as the staff sat, shell-shocked, trying to absorb what had just unfolded. Alex remained standing at the head of the table. What just happened here? Alex began, his voice firm but quiet, is my failure. Sarah's head snapped up, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. I let myself get disconnected. I was so focused on expanding, on hitting revenue targets, on appeasing the board. I completely lost track of the one thing my father built this place on, taking care of his people. He paused. That stops today, not with words, but with action. He produced a folder and laid it open. First, effective right now, the forced tip pool is gone. A few of the servers exchanged surprised looks. Company policy has always been that tips are individual earnings, unless servers voluntarily choose to pool them. Derek violated that policy. From this moment forward, what you earn is what you keep. End of story. If you decide you want to pool with your coworkers, that is entirely your call, but it will be 100% voluntary and completely transparent. Sarah hastily wiped at her eyes, trying to keep up. Second, we're upgrading the entire point-of-sale system. Starting next week, it will automatically track every server's tips, both from credit cards and declared cash. Each of you will have a personal portal you can log into to see your exact earnings for any shift. No more guessing, no more black box. Complete transparency, which brings me to my third point, weekly tip reconciliation reports. Every Sunday evening, the system will generate a full report showing the total amount of tips collected versus the total amount paid out. Any difference over $10 will trigger an immediate investigation, and a copy of that report will be posted in the break room for everyone to review. Alex moved around the table, making sure he met each person's gaze. Fourth, we're setting up an anonymous tip line. As of today, we're installing a poster in the break room that has both a QR code and a phone number for you to use. If you have any concerns about management, scheduling, pay, how you're treated, you can report them with complete anonymity. And just so we're clear, Alex stated, his gaze sweeping the room, those reports are sent straight to me, bypassing your manager entirely. From the side, Rebecca's small voice piped up. To you? What happens if management tries to retaliate because we reported something? She asked. Alex's response was swift and absolute. They're fired. We have a zero-tolerance policy on that. He gestured to Alex, who stepped forward with a stack of papers. It's now officially in writing in your employee handbook, effective immediately, he said, handing out the printed copies. Any retaliation for bringing up legitimate concerns is now grounds for immediate termination, with cause. A stunned silence fell over the staff as they stared down at the documents in their hands. Fifth, Alex continued, I'll be conducting unannounced owner walkthroughs every quarter. I plan on being here and speaking with every single one of you. That means everyone. Dishwashers, bussers, the line cooks, servers, and bartenders. Not just the managers. I need to hear from the people actually doing the work. And sixth, we're creating a server representative position. Beginning this month, you will all elect one person from the floor staff who will sit in on our monthly management meetings. This person will have a genuine voice in decisions about scheduling, changes in policy, and any other issues that directly impact the servers. This is about real representation, not just a symbolic gesture. Emma tentatively raised a hand. What about all the money that Derek took? Is there any way for us to get that back? Alex walked over to his briefcase, opened it, and took out a thick stack of envelopes. I've had the last 18 months of records fully audited. Every single dollar that was stolen from you will be repaid, plus an additional 18% interest for the time you were forced to go without it. He then began to call out names. Emma Williams, he said, $6,800 stolen, which comes to $8,024 with interest. He held an envelope out to her. As Emma tore it open, her eyes fixated on the check inside, and tears immediately started to stream down her cheeks. Jason Davis, $8,100 stolen. With interest, that's $9,558. Jason's hands trembled as he accepted the check. Rebecca Moore, $5,100 stolen, which, with interest, is $6,018. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth as she broke down into sobs. And Sarah Mitchell. Sarah got to her feet, her legs feeling like they could buckle at any moment. $11,200 stolen, which with interest totals $13,216. He handed her the final envelope. Sarah ripped it open and just stared at the check. Her knees almost gave out from under her. Instantly, Emma and Rebecca were at her sides, holding her steady. I can't, Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. This is too much. It's yours. It was always your money, Alex said gently. I'm simply returning what was taken from you. But that isn't all, he added. Through her tears, Sarah looked up at him. I would like to offer you the position of Assistant General Manager, effective immediately. The room, which had been buzzing with emotion, fell completely silent once more. Sarah just shook her head in disbelief. I can't do that. I'm just a server. I don't know how. No, Alex's voice cut through, firm and resolute. You are not just anything. On Thursday night, you presented me with documentation of injustice that you tracked for 48 days. You consistently treated customers with dignity, even when your manager was actively punishing you for it. You went out of your way to protect the younger staff members. Through all of it, you never gave up, and you never stopped doing what was right. That isn't just service, Sarah. That's leadership. But I don't know how to. You know how to treat people with respect, he countered. You know how to protect your team, and you know how to choose what is right over what is easy. That is the very definition of leadership. He then retrieved another document from his briefcase. Assistant General Manager, he read aloud, with a 35% salary increase over your current pay and a full benefits package. He paused, making sure he had her full attention. And that includes full health care with dependent coverage. The air seemed to leave Sarah's lungs. All of your son's medical needs, his insulin, test strips, pump supplies, his doctor visits, any specialists, it will all be covered. There is a zero copay for chronic disease management. Sarah collapsed back her chair, overcome with shattering sobs of pure, unadulterated relief, her entire body shaking. The crushing weight she had carried for so many years, the constant, suffocating terror of how to afford Liam's next vial of insulin, the agonizing calculations over every single dollar, had vanished. The fear that one single, unexpected medical bill could completely destroy everything she had, It all lifted away in an instant. Emma immediately wrapped her arms around Sarah in a tight hug. Rebecca joined their embrace. Even Jason stood nearby, his own eyes glistening with emotion. Alex allowed them a moment before he continued in a quieter voice. The position also comes with a $3,000 annual education stipend. You can use it for professional development, or, he glanced at the worn envelope still sitting on the table, you can use it for Liam's college fund, a real one. Sarah was completely unable to speak. All she could do was cry. Will you help me ensure this place lives up to what it's supposed to be? Alex asked, extending his hand toward her. Through her blurry vision, Sarah looked down at his outstretched hand. She glanced at her co-workers who were all nodding, silently urging her on. She looked at the life-changing check clutched in her trembling fingers, and she looked at the old, worn envelope labeled Liam's college fund, the one that had been both her greatest weapon and her heaviest burden. Still trembling, she rose to her feet and took Alex's hand. Yes, the entire room erupted into applause. Someone, probably Tommy, let out a loud whistle from the back. Emma was somehow crying and clapping at the same time. Alex gave Sarah's hand a firm shake. Welcome to management. We have quite a lot of work ahead of us. Sarah just nodded, still unable to find the words. She looked out at her team, her family really, and saw them all smiling at her, their faces filled with pride. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Sarah Mitchell finally felt safe. 3 months later, the Harborside was a completely different place. Sarah stood near the kitchen pass, confidently wearing her new manager's shirt, a navy blue polo with Assistant GM neatly embroidered on the pocket. She was in the middle of training 2 new servers, a pair of bright-eyed college students. Every single person who walks through that door is important, Sarah explained, reciting the words that had become her personal teaching mantra. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, dressed to the nines or in jeans. They all receive the exact same level of respect. That's not just a suggestion, it's the core of who we are now. One of the younger servers, a girl named Katie, raised her hand. But what are we supposed to do if they're rude to us? How you treat people reflects on you, not them. That part is always your choice, Sarah explained with a gentle smile. My father used to tell me, the real measure of a man is how he treats someone who can do nothing for him. You have to be someone you can be proud of, no matter how the world around you behaves. Understood, Katie replied, jotting it down. Okay, next, let's go over the point of sale system and the mechanics of tip tracking. In a corner booth across the room, Alex was reviewing the weekly tip reconciliation report alongside Emma Williams and Jason Davis. The spreadsheets laid out on the table told a clear story. Every single dollar was accounted for, and each distribution had been verified. Emma, last week's total for you was $380, Alex noted, pointing to her line item. Does that line up with what you see in your portal? Emma pulled up the staff app on her phone to check. Yes, $380 exactly. He nodded. Good. If you ever find any discrepancy, you come to me or Sarah right away, even if it's tiny. We chase down everything. Alex then looked over at Jason. Are you all set? Yep, $420. The system is working perfectly. Jason paused for a moment. Can I ask something though? Always. That anonymous tip line you set up, does anyone actually look at those submissions? I personally go through every single one, Alex confirmed. Then Sarah and I review them together each week. He took out his phone and showed them the dashboard. We received 23 submissions last month alone. Most of it was actually positive feedback. There were a few notes about the kitchen's temperature during the lunch rush, so we got the AC unit fixed. Another mentioned a supplier delivery that was blocking the staff entrance. We just changed their delivery schedule. And no one got in trouble for saying something? Emma asked. Not one person. That's the entire purpose of it. If something isn't right, we need to know about it before it escalates into a major issue. Over at the bar, Rebecca Moore was training a new bartender. The system handles all the tip calculations automatically. So when your shift is over, all you do is log in, verify your total, and the funds go straight to your paycheck. No tip jar, no manager handling cash. It's just you and the software. In a booth toward the back of the restaurant, 7-year-old Liam Mitchell was working on his homework. His backpack and books spread out before him. The insulin pump on his arm was clearly visible. It was the device that kept him alive, and it was now completely covered by his mother's new health insurance. Tommy Anderson appeared from the kitchen, holding a plate of French fries. "Homework fuel," he announced, placing it on the table. "Thanks, Chef Tommy." Liam broke into a grin. "My mom says you make the very best fries in Boston." "Your mom is a smart woman. So, how's the math coming along?" "It's pretty hard, but my mom says that the things that are hard are the ones worth doing." "She is absolutely right about that too." Tommy ruffled Liam's hair before heading back to the kitchen, passing Sarah on his way. She stopped for a moment just to watch her son, healthy, safe, and doing perfectly normal kid things, and felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it ached. At 7 p.m., a man in well-worn work clothes came through the front door. Angela, the new hostess, started to show him to a less-than-ideal table, but Sarah intervened smoothly. "Actually, table 8 just opened up. It has a much better view of the city." The man seemed taken aback. "Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. Everyone deserves our best table. Enjoy your dinner." As Sarah walked by the point-of-sale station, Emma's glance met hers, and they shared a smile. They both knew this was the new standard, not an exception to the rule. This was just how things were now. Later on that evening, Alex dropped in for one of his unscheduled quarterly walkthroughs. But this time, instead of heading to his office, he went directly into the kitchen. "How's the team doing tonight?" he asked, shaking hands with the dishwasher. "Diego, correct? How are we treating you?" "Very well, Mr. Brooks. Really well. Sarah checks on all of us every single shift. She always asks if there's anything we need." Alex found Sarah as her shift was ending. "The staff tells me you're checking in on everybody." "Just part of the job. That's not in your official job description." Sarah smiled. "My dad always said that taking care of your people isn't a line item in a job description. It's a fundamental qualification for the job." Alex let out a laugh. "I really wish I could have met him." "You have," Sarah replied quietly. "Every time you treat a person with dignity, you are meeting him. That is the legacy that he left behind." And with a gesture, she took in the whole restaurant. The team working in sync. Liam sitting safely with his homework. The poster on the wall detailing the anonymous tip line. This is the legacy that you are building. Alex glanced around his restaurant. It had been his father's, but now it was truly his and Sarah's too. It wasn't without its flaws. There were still challenges to overcome, complaints to resolve, and systems to refine. But it was finally moving in the right direction. And that was more than enough. 6 months after that Thursday night, Sarah Mitchell stood at the kitchen pass during the lunch rush, poised and in control. The restaurant was humming with its typical vibrant energy, the sound of customers laughing, the sight of servers moving with purpose, the calls from the kitchen firing orders. Everything was in its proper place. Derek Torres had pleaded guilty to both wage theft and fraud. The Department of Labor prosecuted the case, and his sentence was probation with full financial restitution. He would never manage employees again. But Derek was just one man. The problem itself was so much bigger. Alex had since learned that 40 million Americans are victims of wage theft each year. Between stolen tips, altered time cards, and unpaid overtime, it added up to $15 billion stolen annually, a total greater than all other robberies combined. It was the single most common crime that most of the public had never even heard of, because its victims were too afraid to come forward. That was what needed to change. Alex found himself back at the bar, in the exact same spot he'd occupied 6 months prior, staring right into the lens of a camera mounted on the wall. This was the piece he promised the documentary crew he would film. Alex leaned in. "If your pay is being stolen, and for countless people watching right now, it is, this is your game plan. Step 1. Record absolutely everything." Sarah's collection of notes didn't just win her case, it won 3 others. "So keep your own log of hours. Snap photos of the weekly schedule. Hold on to every receipt. Your phone can be your greatest defense. Step 2. Understand what you're entitled to. The Department of Labor provides free information at dol.gov/ag/WD. Stealing your wages is against the law. Full stop. You can file a claim without hiring an attorney. And step 3, realize you are not alone. This is happening to 40 million people. Tell your story. Let other people know they aren't the only ones going through this fight. And for any business owners tuning in, your team is the heart of your operation. Guard their well-being fiercely. Build systems where integrity isn't an afterthought. It's the foundation. Become the kind of leader your people are proud to work for. And if you're a manager, never forget the lesson Sarah taught us. She chose to treat someone with respect, even when it was the harder choice. That isn't weakness, that is pure strength. That is what real leadership looks like. On screen, text faded in. National Wage Theft Hotline, 1-844-762-3952. Alex rose from the stool and moved over to where Sarah was busy behind the counter. A quick smile passed between them before she turned her attention to a new arrival. A weary-looking woman in jeans, splattered with paint. "Hey there!" Sarah's voice was full of warmth. "What can I get for you today?" It was the same kindness, the same fundamental dignity, showing that every single person who crossed that threshold had value. Every last one.